Hi sewing friends, welcome to another tutorial. I'm Stephanie and this is Ashtown Creations. In this tutorial we are making the Rozy Wallet by Serial Bag Makers. It's a double fold or bifold wallet with a bar lock clasp. I have done cork on the front and the back. I've used a gunmetal hardware and I have used quilting cotton for the inside. So it has 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 card slots. So you've got a bunch here and 2 more down here. It's got a coin pocket. It's got a slip pocket there, another one here, and then there's also one on the other side. So there's a lot of places you can put things in here. It will fit bills side to side. I've used a number 3 YKK zipper, and I think there's a little bit of Decaville light in there. I love making these wallets. They go together fairly quickly and they look great and they're nice and slim. These are probably right now the most popular wallets that I sell at my markets. And this one is actually a custom order. And my customer has chosen this safari print cork. So I will leave any links to, if I can find the fabric anymore, because some of it I've had in my stash for a while, but if I can find links for hardware and links for fabrics, I will put those in the description box below. I will also put timestamps. Even though this isn't a long sew, I will try and break it up into a little more manageable chunks. So I will put timestamps in the description box below. I would like to say thank you to Anne from Serial Bag Makers for allowing me to record this tutorial for you. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below. I will do my best to respond as soon as I possibly can. I think that's it. So if you would like to see how this wallet is made, then stick with me. Let's go through the pieces for this Rozy wallet. So up here on the left, I have 2 pieces of cork. I figured out what half of the height was for that piece and then added a seam allowance. So because I have directional print, I want to put it together like this. I'll stitch along the end and then both sides will have everything going the right way. So I will have a center seam on the bottom of the wallet, but everything will be going in the right direction. So that's the exterior or outer. This is the main lining. And well, for the cork, I haven't added anything to it. For the main lining, I have already added my woven interfacing and I kept it out of the seam allowances on the side, but it goes the full length. Now, some of these measurements I have adjusted from the pattern. I want to make sure that I've kept as much out of the seam allowance as possible. And then across the top where the bar lock goes, I don't want to have too much in there either. I need some in there because we need to fill up the bar lock, but I don't want too much. So I have woven interfacing all the way down. And then this part here is Decaville light. And I have made sure that is out of my seam allowances. That is the lining. Up here we have 2 slip pockets. This is all quilting cotton. This just happens to look like a linen, but it's actually just the print on it. These are the slip pockets. In the slip pockets, I have added a woven interfacing as well out of my seam allowances. So I have 2 of those. This is my zipper pocket. So the zipper pocket has woven interfacing just on the one side. This will be the side that we put the zipper in. It needs a little bit more structure. I've added the woven interfacing. Again, I've kept it out of those seam allowances. It's fine to be in the top part here. So with the zipper pocket, I have a zipper pocket facing. We have the zipper pocket lining. This is the bottom side, and this is the top side. And it'll make more sense when we get there. Over here I have 2 cards, so I have 1 of each of these. These are not interfaced. They don't need to be interfaced, all 3 of these. So over here I have card pocket type A, which also has interfacing, and I have made sure to keep it out of my seam allowances. 2 of those, and then I have, these are the card pockets type B, and I have just a little strip of Decaville light in there, and it's out of the seam allowances just along the top. So I've already interfaced all of my pieces, so they are ready to go. So yeah, there's 4 of those. Up here I have my Ashtown Creations. It's a woven label. I have a couple different kinds of or styles of woven label. This is the folded woven label, and will put this on top of one of the card slots. It will go on one of the bottom card slots. And then the last piece I have, oh, I'm missing my zipper. I'll go get that in a minute. But the other piece I have here is my bar lock. I'm doing gunmetal. My customer has chosen gunmetal. So I'm using this. It's a 7.5 inch, I believe. This one's closed end. I prefer closed ends on these. Just it keeps everything nice and neat. So it's got the tongue lock. I already have tried my screws and put my screws in. And I also have a zipper. This is a 3mm zipper. This is a YKK pre-made. I will be cutting off the metal parts at both ends. That is all we need for this wallet. So when you're ready, we're going to go ahead and start sewing up this wallet. The first thing I'm going to do with the wallet is I'm going to take my 2 cork pieces and put them right sides together. I want to make sure they're both facing up the right direction. So that's the top of each of the panels, and I'm just going to put them right sides together. And I'm going to put a clip along the bottom so that I know where I'm going to stitch. And I'm just going to stitch with 1/4 inch because that's how much seam allowance I added. 1/4 inch seam allowance, a 3.5 stitch length just across this bottom. Now that I have that done, I'm going to open up the cork, and then I'm going to butterfly the seam. So I'm going to make sure that I've got the seam allowance going out to either side. I want to spread it because that'll spread out the bulk. And now I am going to top stitch right along this seam line with 1/8 inch seam allowance. And I'm doing a 5, or no, I'll do a 4 stitch length. And then I'm just putting my hand under here and running my finger along in my right hand and then pushing it down with my left so that I can keep it spread. Turn, come over a couple stitches, and then come back down the other side. We can set this aside for now. I'm gonna make sure, I'll do it off camera, but I'll make sure that the height of this is what we're expecting, what the pattern suggests, and set this aside for now. Now I'm going to work with all of the pieces except the zipper pocket. The zipper pocket's the one with just the woven interfacing on the one side. So I'm going to set that one aside because we'll work with that after. But all these other pieces, I'm going to go along, and I am going to, you don't have to, but I like to do this, and in the instructions call for it, I'm going to top stitch just along the edge here. I'm going to leave it at a 4 stitch length. It's completely up to you what stitch length. This is just top stitching. It is just decorative. And I will back stitch as long as I keep it within the seam allowance at the side, then it should be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and just go through all of the pieces that I have there and not chain stitching them. Now that I have all of the pieces top stitched, I'm going to set one piece aside because we're going to work with just this. These are the slip pockets. I'm going to set one slip pocket aside because we're just going to work with the other one. Now I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to go through according to the instructions, and on the slip panel piece, measure down from the top according to what the measurements are. And then for each one of these pieces, so these are the pocket, the card slot B's have certain measurements that we're going to go from the top and then also from the bottom. All 4 of them get marked down from the top and the bottom, up from the bottom. So I'm going to go get my chalk. I'm going to mark all of those lines, and then on the inside of one of these, actually I'm going to set one of these are card pocket A. So we have one that goes with the card slots and one that goes on the zipper pocket. So I've got them here. I'm just setting them off to the side. This is what we're going to be working with. So make sure that you've added in all of the measurements as shown in the instructions. And then when we come back, we will start constructing the card pockets. I have all of my pieces marked now. So I'm going to take my slip pocket piece. So this first one, the larger one, and I'm going to spread it out as much as I can this way. I've sewn the top part, so it's not going to be perfectly flat, but we don't need it perfectly flat. We just need it open enough that I can work with it. So now I'm going to take one of these piece B's, the card slot piece B, and I am going to, see, I've got a line drawn here. I'm not sure if you can, yeah, you can see the white. I've drawn it in white chalk. And I'm going to take one of my piece B's and I'm going to match it up side to side along the line that I drew on my wine colored piece. And I'm just going to put clips in it. Now I'm going to go over to the machine, and along this second line, I am going to stitch. So there's 2 lines on each of these, and on this bottom one, I am going to stitch. The next piece I'll show you on the once we get to the machine, but the next piece will go on just like this, and we'll do this for all of them. The final piece has a line. I don't know if we can see it or not. Has a line. It's pretty much at the edge of where I've cut off my woven interfacing. So, and that's where we're going to stitch the last piece. But when we get there, hopefully it'll be easier to see when we're at the machine. As I mentioned, I'm going to sew down this line here. So I've got it, I'm leaving it on the 4 because that'll be fine. Stitch length of 4, and I made sure that it's even on both sides. I will back stitch because these stitches will be hidden by the next pocket in line. So I'm going to just back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. I'm going to take the clips off for now. I'm going to take my next piece and I am going to put it down in line with the sides and with the chalk line that I drew, just like that. I'm going to clip it in place and then stitch down this line again. I will do the same for these other 2, and I'll just fast forward through, and then when we get to this one, I'll show you what we do. It's very similar, but it is a little different. Before we put on this last pocket, we need to cut down the seam allowance. Now, there are 2 numbers in the pattern. There's a number in with the rest of the instructions that says how much to cut away, and then there's a number in the actual figure. It's figure number 14. In the written instructions, it says one amount, and in the drawing, it says another one. I am going with the one in the words because I did the last time I did this, I went with the one in the drawing and it was too far up and it did not get covered nicely with this. So this one here we put down on the line, and then we have to stitch it up about here. So if I cut it off too short, it's not caught in the last seam. I know it's trying to cut away bulk, but I also don't want raw. I don't want this pocket to have raw edges. I'm probably still going to add some fray check to it. I've got my fray check right here, so I'll add some. I'm going to cut this down, and I'm not cutting this fabric here. I'm only cutting this last card slot. So I have marked a line that I'm going to cut along, and I'm going to try and cut it off without cutting the rest of the slots. So fold the other ones out of the way and then cut along this line. I'm going to end up having to cut this down anyways because my slip pocket's a little bit too long. So I'm just going to go along now with my fray check and put it all along the edge of at least the first pocket, the pieces from the first pocket, if not the next one in. All right, just gonna let that dry. It's not completely dry, but it's probably close enough. So now I'm going to take my last piece, make sure what the side that I've drawn the line on is down towards the bottom, and I'm going to line it up along the chalk line that I drew, and I'm going to clip it in place. So I want to make sure I'm clipping with the top out of the way. So just want to lift the top part of this piece up out of the way, and now I'm going to stitch along this line that I drew, making sure everything's all lined up. Now before I go any further, I'm going to just check. So you can see down here it missed most of this. So it's, oh, and it slipped down. That's why. So I'm going to take it out and do it off camera, but if you can see here, the pocket actually slipped out of alignment. So I'm going to go back, take out the stitches, and put it back on properly and sew it back on along that line that I drew. But I'll do that off camera. And when we come back, we'll move on to the next step. I trimmed up the bottom, and I didn't just trim it from the one side. I flipped the whole thing down and then trimmed off of both edges. So now this is the bottom of this pocket thing. I've also gone ahead, and according to the measurements in the instructions, I have marked a line down the center because we want to split these two in half, and you don't want to forget it. Now I'm going to flip this back part of the slip pocket out of the way, and we are just going to stitch through these pockets. We're not going to stitch through the back. I mean, if you've done it already, it's gonna work. The card slots will still work, and the slip pocket will still work. It's just you'll feel the stitches on the back of it. So this just makes a little cleaner presentation. So I'm going to start from the bottom because it's easier to, it's better for the card pockets if you come up over them than to come down on them because it can shove them down out of place. So we want to start from the bottom, and I'm going to backstitch down here, come all the way up. You can go back down on the same line, or I just come up and then I backstitch over each of these card slots, and then I will end up just past this top gray one. I'll pull my threads through and I will knot it at the back. You can go all the way up to the stitch line if you want. Just if you're wanting to keep this clean, I wouldn't go too far. Left my threads long, so you can see I've gone over and back stitched over all of those just to reinforce. Now I've pulled my thread at the back. It should pop the thread unless you've stitched it. Grab the loop and then pull it to the back. And then I knot it 3 times. Once this way, and then I go basically backwards, and then I go forward again. And hopefully that's enough. And I'm going to snip it, but I'm going to leave them a little on the long side so that if it does come unknotted for whatever reason, it's got a longer ways to go to actually undo these threads, because we're going to cover that anyways. So covered that, put that back down, and now I am just going to baste. I'm just going to keep it on the 4 stitch length. And now I'm going to baste up either side. And as I mentioned before about coming up the card slots, I'm going to do this up this side. I'm going to flip it over and then go up the other side. Now flipping it over, and again coming up from the bottom. That's everything for this one. You can go across the bottom if you want. I'm just going to grab this is my lining fabric right here. I usually have this at the top and then the zipper pocket at the bottom, because I like the zipper pocket on the front of the wallet so that when you open it up, the zipper is right side up. So this will be the back of my wallet and this will be the front of my wallet. So if I have a directional print, which I don't, but if you do, if I did, I would have it so that this was right side up. Put the card pockets, card slots on the one side. And I'm actually going to go, because it's a little wider than it needs to be, and I will trim that up before putting it on fully, before I like sew it in place. I'm just going to clip it for now, but it is a little wider, at least on that side. It's, yeah, a little wider. So I will make sure that it's only as wide as the lining piece that we're putting it onto. But I'm just going to clip this in place so that I've got it. So that's one side. Now we can set this aside and we're going to work on our zipper pocket. Moving on, first thing I did was added my name tag to it. So I just took some wash away wonder tape and folded the bottom of it up once, and then put some more double-sided tape and just taped it on. This part's still loose. And then I will be going through and just stitching along here. This is the way I found. I like to do my name tags in my wallets. I don't like putting big bulky things on these. I've also marked a line down the center for when we go to stitch it on top. But setting that aside for now, I will go, when we go over to the machine to stitch the other stuff, I will stitch this down as well. I have taken my facing, hopefully you can see that. I've drawn on it with chalk, and I've measured it as per the instructions and put my marks in. So we will be stitching it around the outside, and then we'll cut down the inside and out to the corners. Now I'm going to take my zipper. It had metal parts on the end, either end. I've cut those off, and I've taken my slider off. I prefer to work with my zippers without the slider. You can leave it on if you want. Just make sure you don't stitch over any metal parts. So we want to have our bottom piece. This is the zipper pocket bottom piece. It's the shorter of the two. And then the instructions say you can use glue. I'm going to be using some wash away wonder tape. I've already put it down here across the bottom. This is going to be the inside of the pocket. So we're going to end up seeing it basically like that after. So it's the bottom of the inside of the pocket. So this will be the top. So if you have directional fabric, put your direction as this is the top of the direction. So it will look upside down in front of you. So at the bottom of this piece, put either your glue or your double-sided tape. Now we're going to take, I have, as I mentioned, number 3 zipper, and I'm going to center it along this long edge, and I'm just going to press it into place. Now I'm going to take this to the machine, and I'm going to sew it on with the recommended seam allowance. I'm going to also put some double-sided tape on this piece, and I will add it as well. So I'm going to move this over to the machine, including the zipper slider. Now, number 3 zipper sliders are a little harder to put on than number 5, but it is doable. And as I said, if you don't want to take it off, you don't have to. I just prefer to. So going over to the machine, I'm going to stitch down the side of this with as close to the seam allowance given in the pattern as possible. I haven't switched out my presser foot to a zipper foot. Probably should, but I don't like doing that. So I'm just going to do the best I can with what I have. Back stitching at the beginning and the end of the seam. This side's done. Now I'm going to finger press this for now, but you can take it to your iron, which I will probably do later. So now I don't have directional fabric, but again, the part that I'm putting the tape on is going to be the top. So if you have directional, I'm going to put it along here, and this is the top of this piece because it will hang down like that. I'm going to put some tape, double-sided tape across the top. Actually, I'm going to flip it around so I can actually see it. I'm going to take the paper backing off of this piece. And now I'm going to put the zipper along the edge. I just put tape on, but I also want to match up the sides. So I'm going to gently do that, and then I'm going to adjust it this way. So I want to make sure it's in line with the edge of the zipper and also the edge of the first piece. That should be good. And now I'm going to do the same thing with this, trying to get as close to the full seam allowance as possible. All right, you can set this aside and iron it. So on the facing part, I have added my lines, drawn them according to what they have in the instructions, and we will be adding it to our zipper pocket piece. So the part that we'll be adding it to is the part that's interfaced. So I've opened it up and I'm going to flip it this way, this direction. I need to measure, I need to find my centers, so I'm just going to put a little chalk mark for the center. So I've got the center marked here, and then I'm going to find the center of this piece as well and put a mark on it, or at least try to. There we go. So that's the center of this piece and that's the center there. Now I need to measure down a certain amount from this edge down, and that's where we're going to be putting this piece. I'll just pause the camera, measure it, and then we'll come back. So it works out pretty much to being right along the fold line. So I'm taking my facing piece and I'm matching it up in the center and then along this fold line. I'm going to grab a couple pins and I'm going to pin without catching my tablecloth. I'm going to pin down the center to hold it in place until we get around to the machine. That's good enough. We're going to then, when I get to the machine, stitch, put my needle down in that corner, stitch all the way down, across, there, and back. And if you want to back stitch in your corners to reinforce, you can do that. I'm going to put my needle down in the corner, and I'm actually going to put my stitch length down to a 3. I find it easier to get a nice corner when I turn the stitch length down on these pockets. And I will be going around all of them. I do on the wallets. On bags, I don't tend to. Now I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to grab my scissors and just cut along that line. So I just want to get it started. The cut, you can use your, if you have a utility craft knife, X-Acto knife, whatever you want to call it. If you have one of those, you can use that. I'm just going to use my scissors, and then I'm going to snip into the corner as close to the corner as I can without cutting my stitches. I'm going to try the same on this side. I'm going to take this to the iron and I'm going to press it along this edge, push it up, pull it through, and try and get it either really nice on the edge or more to the inside so that we don't want to see this facing on the outside. I've matched mine with my zipper pocket, but if you haven't, then try and keep it so that towards the inside. You can use tape if that helps. I'm just going to go use the iron. So I'll be right back. Back from the iron. I've ironed this. I've tried to pull it as nice as I can. So I think it looks okay on this side. I have put some fray check, because I'm using quilting cotton, I've put some fray check in the corners. So hopefully it will keep it from fraying. So just pop this to the side for a second. And now I'm going to grab the zipper pocket part, so with the zipper that we've installed, and I'm going to put my zipper pull on. Now, this is the bottom, so this is the front. The pocket's going to close like this, and I like my zipper slider to end on the left side. So just moving the top part out of the way, I'm going to open. So it's harder to see on this. So if you need to see how to put a zipper pull on, I will create an extra video, just tutorial video on how to add a zipper pull on. There are lots of examples in my other videos. This one is black and it's just really too small to see. So just trust me that I can see that zipper coils interlock. I can see that my right one, I think, is higher. Yeah, my right one's higher than my left. I want to keep this straight. So I'm going to make sure that this one on the right is the first coil in when I put this together. So I'll just try and pop it on like I do all the other ones, even it up, and then push it down. Once I get just a tutorial on putting a zipper slider on done, I will link it in the description box. So I'm not on. So my zipper bar on my zipper slider is heading down, and I can see I have a bulge more on one side than the other, and I can see that my left coil is first. So I need to back this off just a bit, and I'm going to try and pull this one down a bit and straighten up the zipper slider so that the coil on the right is the first one by just one. There, I've got it. So that it's a little better. The bar is pointing right down the center of the teeth, and it doesn't look to be a bulge anymore on one side than the other. So I'm just going to put this in the center and spread that out. Now I'm going to grab my Wash Away Wonder tape, and I'm going to put some tape on either side of this zipper. Just a little bit. This is just going to help me be able to put the zipper in place inside the box. Wash away wonder tape doesn't stick for very long, especially when it's older tape like this one. I've had it for a while. And it can be taken off if you need to. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to have to do it off camera, what I plan on doing, I'll take the backing off the bottom tape. I'll put this, line it up nicely around the zipper, and then stick it in place. And then I'll come back and we can do the other part. But I can't see it right now. So I'm just going to go do it off camera and come back. I'm back. I don't remember if I said it or not, but the shorter side is down. My zipper is closing to this side, and I just took the paper backing off the bottom piece of tape. Now I'm going to pull this away and take the paper backing off of this top piece of tape. And then I'm just going to lie this down so that it is even within the box. Just like that. Now my back, it's still separated, so I'm going to stitch around it, right on the edge, about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, all the way around. I'll start here, come down and around, move my zipper slider, and then finish the rest of the box. Just move the zipper slider out of the way once I get around there. And I will be back stitching. You can leave your tails long if you want. And I'm back onto a 4 stitch length. All right, now I'm up to my zipper slider. I'm going to make sure my needle's down, lift up my presser foot, and move my zipper slider out of the way. It's gone all the way around. Now I'm going to take this back piece and flip it down on top of the front like that. I've got extra here, so I'm just going to go off camera quickly and trim that up. I've trimmed it down, so now I'm just going to flip it over and pull back the front part of the zipper pocket, exposing the side with the zipper. And I am going to start at the top here, back stitch over the zipper, come down, across, back, up, and back stitch. And I'm doing this all with a 4 stitch length. I'm going to try not to catch this pocket, the front part of the pocket, in my stitches. If you feel the need to cut it down some more, you can, but I think we're okay. The only thing I may do is trim this up a bit so that it's not in my crease for the pocket, just like that. You don't need to do that, but I just am so that it's not in this crease. Now I'm going to, I flip this back down so that the back and the front are all together. I'm going to line up the sides, and now I'm going to top stitch along this edge. Maybe I'll throw a few clips in it. Move the zipper just in case. I'm using again the 4 stitch length, 4mm stitch length. All right, before we go on any further, before you put your zipper in, it shows that you should have this pocket on. I like to put it on once the pocket's already in, but you have to make sure that you've got your pocket out of the way. So I just, as I showed, flipped it up out of the way. I'm lining up my pocket along the edges and the bottom. And now I am just going to stitch this on up the center here. So we want to make sure that we don't have our pocket. So this is why you would put it on first. I forget. I do it this way every time because I keep forgetting to put it on before we put the pocket in. Anyways, so as long as you get it on before you close up this panel, you should be okay. So I'm going to start at the bottom and do the same kind of thing I did. I'm going to back stitch there and then back stitch up here and then pull my threads through and tie them off. I have in the past forgotten to do this, and I've had to try and do it after the fact, and that's fun to try and get everything out of the way so that you can do this. Oops, I should have left them a little longer. Hopefully that's fine. And there we go. We've got our zipper pocket panel together. And now I'm going to grab the slip pocket part, and I'm going to put the slip pocket underneath. You can measure down and try and get it even. I just try and match it up on the bottoms and the sides like that. I'm going to put some clips in it, and now I'm going to stitch up the sides, and again flip it over so that I can stitch up the other side so I don't catch that either pocket. So it's a basting, so if you want to change your stitch length, you can. For this whole, I'm not doing it for this one. Now before I put it on to the lining, I am going to trim up the edges just to clean them up a bit and make sure that it's the right width to match up with the lining piece. I've gone through and cleaned this up, and now I'm going to place it along the bottom and the edges of my lining piece, and I'm going to clip it in place. All right, now that I've got it clipped, I want to stitch it on to the lining panel. So I'm going to start just in one corner, come across all the way down and back to wherever I started. I'm going to try and remember to back stitch over the edges here, just as a reinforcing stitch. I'm basting this together, so it's only about 1/8 of an inch. And there we go. We have completed the inside of the wallet. So now we need to work on adding it to the outside. So I have pretty much gotten the same on the top. I think they're pretty much the same. This one may be a little closer to center, the elephant. Pick a side, whichever you want to be your front. And I usually put my zipper pocket at the front. So when I open it up, so if I close it this way, and this is the front, I open it up and my zipper pocket is the right way up. Because if I had it like this and you open the zipper pocket, all of the coins are going to fall out. So that's why I put it at the front, so that if you're holding it like this, you flip the lock open, this comes down, you've got your zipper pocket there. I don't see anywhere in the instructions that it says which one has to be the front. Certainly not in the pictures. You decide which one you want to be the front. Moving on, I think I want that one to be the front, so I'm going to make sure that my zipper pocket is at the top, and I'm going to line it up along this one long edge and clip. If your exterior panel, if you've done like me and you've sewn it together, make sure that you've trimmed it back to the correct size so that it matches up nicely. And now we're going to stitch this on with the recommended seam allowance. And I'm still on the 4, so I'm back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. All right, so that's how it's going to look. I'm just going to clean up some threads. So that looks okay. So now I've got it like this. So this is the edge we just sewed. So now I want to take this edge and move it over to the far side like that. And I'm going to clip it in place. And as you can see, it does not lie flat. That is correct. After we sew this on and turn it, the edges of the cork, on my case, the edges of the exterior will come around to the inside of the wallet. That is the way we want it. So I'm just going to stitch it on like this. And again, with the recommended seam allowance. Just moving the zipper out of the way just so it doesn't get too bulky around the seam. So now one of the things it suggests because these sides are quite thick, one of the things it suggests is to cut down some of this bulk, so that, because when we turn it, we want to make sure that the seams will sit nicely. This is a very small seam allowance and we've basted it, so it does make it a little more difficult to do it. So I usually turn it. Now I don't always have this on, so I can turn it and then turn it back. But I'm going to turn it through and see how it sits on the sides. And if I need to turn it back through and trim some of it down, I do have extra, where are my scissors? So I'm just going to trim a little bit down here, make a mess. And I see that I haven't gotten quite the right seam allowance there, so I'm going to just go back over the edge. I'm just going to go back over this whole seam and even it out. I'm going to do both sides. So that should have evened it out a little. Now I'm going to pull it through. So put my hand in, I'm just closing the zipper so I don't grab the wrong thing. And then I'm going to try and pull this part. It's not too bad. So see, on this side, it's sitting quite, like there's quite a lot of bulk in there. Where see, this side's sitting nicely. This side isn't. And I can try to, if I even them out, I've got a bit of a gap. So I need to trim it down a bit so that it can sit more like that. Let's see how it goes when I fold it. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of steam from the iron, a little bit of manipulation, and it'll sit fine. We want to make sure these are going to fit. So I'm just going to find my screwdriver. I'm just going to see if this side fits. I put these screws in. These are ones I think I got from Amazon or something, and I need to test them to make sure I've got screws that fit in each of the holes. So once I found screws that fit, I just left them in there. So take those out, and now I want to test. That's going to be too thick. I can separate a bit. So it's a little too thick. Got one side. It's going to end up being glued on, but I'm also going to be stitching these together, trimming off the excess. I'm going to put fray check on it, little glue, so right now it's sticking out past. So, but I don't think this side is going to actually go in. I'm going to trim off some of the extra fabric in these, at least in the four corners. It seems to be sitting kind of nicely in the center, so I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to trim it up and I'll show you what I've trimmed. So I did a couple things. Take this one off. So in each of these corners, so I flipped it wrong side out again, and for each of these corners I took it down to about 1/8 of an inch and then just chopped off the corner 1/8 of an inch down here, and then it gradually went out. I did that for all four corners. I also cleaned up the end here, and on this one I've actually cleaned up the end and I stitched it. I've also ironed. I ironed, put my iron in here and in here, so it lies a lot more flat. So now I'm going to stitch this one. Move these out of my way. So I'm going to stitch this one down, and it's basically a basting stitch, but it's joining the inside and the outside, making it all into one, which makes it a lot easier to put the metal bars on. So the back of the wallet will have the part of the lock with the tongue. I just put them on and dry fit them, make sure that it will fit together. The fabrics here want to get caught, so I will be putting some glue along, probably my Fabri-Tac along that edge. I end up using my Gem High-Tack permanent adhesive for bonding non-porous embellishments. So I use that for my bar locks, but I just want to get this on and fitted. So right now I've got the fabric on this side wanting to fold over, and I can feel it, the cork on the other side. So I want it to fit down as snugly as possible. So I'm going to, while I've got it on here, I'm going to mark. I'm just going to take my silver marking pen because I'm going to be punching out these holes. So I want to make sure, hoping I've got it down as far as it'll go, and then I'm going to mark these holes. So I've got quite a bit of bulk in here, so it wants to push the bar lock away, so I'm just pushing it up so that I can get it. Hopefully these are all even. It's all down evenly. Oh no, I can't see. I think that's one. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put glue across here and I'm going to let it sit and glue together, clean up any extra threads so they don't get stuck in. I'm going to go back through and mark. I have another one probably around there, but it just didn't come through. So I'm going to go back and put this on and remark my holes on both sides. So the side with the hole that we'll have to punch the hole will be on this side. So this is the front of the wallet, and it gets the one with the hole. So I will go off camera and do all of that, and then probably let it sit and dry, the glue dry, And then when we come back, we'll install the rest of the locks. For this last step, I've already put this end on. I was struggling to get it. There is a lot of fabric in here and it didn't want to sit. These are pretty narrow, so it didn't want to sit on there very well. I went and I punched the holes, marked the holes, punched the holes. I put glue in it. The only thing I haven't done on this side is put I put glue in around the screws. So I will, after I'm done this side, I will go through, take all those screws out, put a little bit of this glue on it, and then screw them back in. I just wanted to make sure that I had the right screws for the right side. Anyways, I'm going to be working on this side now. And as I mentioned, this is the front, the one with the hole where the tongue has to go through. So the tongue here has to go through that hole. So I have gone through and I've marked each of those spots. The other thing I need to do is mark around this opening. And okay, yeah, I wasn't sure my marking pen was actually working. So I've marked that. I can safely take this off. The other thing I did to both sides is I've put fray check along the edge. And then on this side, I have put some Fabri-Tac glue. Now I'm almost out, so I'm hopefully going to be able to do it for this side. But if not, then I will have to go grab another bottle. It feels like it's almost out. I take my bottle and I just put glue along the edge. Mine's all clumpy, so it doesn't look great. I tried to flatten it out with my finger and it just stuck to my finger, not the wallet. So it's probably good that this is almost done. And then I want to smooth it out, but I also want to pinch these fabrics together. Now I had some of my clips on it, but I don't really want glue all over my clips. So I'm hoping that this will just stay together once it's been pinched. That's probably good enough. I'm going to go over the marks that I made for my screws. So I've got those marked. I've got the center thing here marked. Now I need to punch out the center. So I'm just going to go off camera for a minute and find my punches and everything and get that set up on the table so we can punch out this hole. So I have one of my presses here. This one usually has my hole punches in, but this case I want to punch with a die. So I have these flat plates that I got from Debbie at Doodlebug Dreamer, I think. If I can find them, I'll link them in the description box below. But they're great for using these dies. These dies I found on Amazon. I think there might be other places you can get them. I definitely got mine on Amazon. But they come in really handy for things like this. I have not used all the different ones included. So this one, bottom one pops in and the top one just screws in. I've already gone through and I want to find the die that's closest to the size we're cutting out, but just a little bit bigger. So when we look at the hole here, there isn't a lot of room between the hole and the edge of the lock. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room to make a mistake. So I found this die. It can cut further away from either side, but I don't want it to cut in a whole lot further than what's there. A little bit further, but not a whole lot. I have lined the die up. I'm really hoping it stayed lined up. It kept moving on me. It's still moving. So I need to line it up and then fit it under my press and then push down on it without it moving. Hopefully it hasn't moved. Yep, that's pretty good. So it didn't cut all the way through. They don't usually. I've been using these for years, so they're getting a little old. I'll take my snips and continue to work around. All right, so I've got it cut out. I'm going to just put my bar lock on and test that I've got it deep enough. And we need to make sure that all of the fabric goes in. And I want to make sure that my holes that I've marked line up with the holes in the bar lock. So it looks like it is. Now I got some cork on this side sticking out. Everything is pretty even. I don't know if you can see in the hole. It's pretty good, but I can see there's some fuzz sticking up, but if I trim that out and then put some more glue in that location or fray check, it should be okay. So I'm going to just go off camera and clean this up a bit and put some glue in it. And then when we come back, I'll punch the holes and we'll finish this off. All right, I've added some glue and some frayed check. I've tried to compress it a bit and I've tried to clean up some of the threads. Now I'm going to take my manual rotary hole punch and I'm just going to punch out the holes for the grooves. And now I'm going to grab some frayed check and put some in each of those holes. So I've got my Gem High-Tack glue and I'm going to put it in along the channel of the bar lock, and I'm going to stop before I hit the opening and then start on the other side and go all the way down. Don't want too much in there. If you get too much in, I've got microfiber cloth and some water close by so that I can wipe up glue if it comes out the edges, like the ends or something. So we want the screws to be on the inside, so I'm just going to start fitting it on and making sure that the fabric goes inside the bar lock. So all the way in here, make sure it's all inside the bar lock. And the same with the cork on the other side. And then, so on the side here, I've got some squishing out, so I'm just gonna wipe it up so it doesn't stick or it doesn't ruin the bar lock. All right, and I can see the holes. So I'm gonna grab my screwdriver and I'm going to start putting the screws in the holes. And I'm just doing the same as I did on the other side, and I will add the glue after. You don't need to watch me do that. If you want to see it, I did it in the Howie bowler bag tutorial. I showed you how I put glue on the screws. I just dipped them in the glue that comes out the end just to make sure the screws don't come out after. All right, everything is in, everything feels mostly flat. I don't want to screw these in too much because they can go right through. So that feels pretty good. Buff up the lock. Take my fingerprints off and make sure I got any glue off. And there we go. Go through and make sure if you've used chalk or any erasing marker or marking pen, make sure it all comes off your pockets. If you've added glue to the screws, it may end up popping out, so you may have to wipe it up. And there we go. This is the Rozy Wallet by Serial Bag Makers. And this is how I put them together. I'm mostly following the instructions, but there was a few differences. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel, and I will see you in the next one.